right. Good cold evening to everybody. First, we'll start off with roll call. Commissioner Buttleman.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Okeson is absent. Commissioner Peltzer is absent. Commissioner Sin.
Here.
Commissioner Redmond here. Okay, next item, 3, approval of agenda. Hopefully we've all had a chance to review the agenda from January's meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So the agenda for tonight, I wanted to remove item 8A. I had misunderstood Commissioner Okeson regarding this University of Minnesota Turf Grass Field Day. I think she went to a conference and I had misinterpreted. I thought she wanted to give a presentation. So I would like to remove that, please.
Okay, great.
Are we going to put the goal setting on here?
And I think the goal setting is on there. It's item 5C.
Yep. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any nays? Nope. Okay, we have an agenda. All right. Item 4A, meeting minutes from January. Does anybody have any edits to the meeting minutes? Otherwise, a motion to approve minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the Wednesday, January 23rd Environmental Natural Resource Commission meeting.
Okay. Is there a second?
I shall make a second.
Any last-minute edits prior to voting? No? Okay, all in favor of approval of minutes for January 23, 2019? Aye?
Aye.
I abstain, not having been here that day.
Thank you. Any nays? Hearing none. Okay, minutes are approved. All right, item 5A, election of chair and vice chair. And we have from Sean. Sean, did you want to go through this? I don't know if we need to.
You read lips.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I can read
I'd
lips.
love to. So the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission ordinance requires that the commission elect a chair and vice chair at the beginning of each year to run the meetings. And we had this on the January agenda, but the commission had tabled it due to the fact that not all commissioners were present. And the commission also had recommended that anyone interested in serving as chair or vice chair submit their interest to city staff prior to the next meeting. So we're bringing this back for chair and vice chair. In 2018, the Environmental Commission did elect Commissioner Reese as the chair and Commissioner Redmond as the vice chair. Sorry about that. So we are now looking for motions for chair and vice chair. And for your information, the 2 commissioners that had submitted interest to city staff during the last month was for chair, Commissioner Redmond and Commissioner Miller, and for vice chair, Commissioner Miller. So we have those 2 nominees for chair and vice chair, and then, of course, we're taking additional nominees tonight, if interested. So with that, I'll turn it over to the commission.
Okay. Commissioner Miller, I saw your hand up.
If there isn't, I didn't know if you guys were interested in that at all.
We're interested in somebody being the chair and vice chair.
In being chair or vice chair.
I expressed interest in vice chair only if other people weren't interested, because I wanted to make sure everyone has a chance to get their chance. So
Okay. So it sounds like we don't have any other names being put forth for chair or vice chair this evening, is what I'm understanding. If I heard me right. Okay. All right.
And now I can raise my hand.
Commissioner Miller?
And in light of that, I can remove my name from interest in chair because I just wanted, same thing, I just wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity for people who hadn't done it before, but I didn't want to be leaving a chair open. So that can make this much quicker.
Okay. So we currently have names for nomination, myself as chair, Commissioner Redmond, and Commissioner Miller as vice chair.
I'll make a motion to nominate Commissioner Redmond for chair.
Second?
Is there any discussion on that? Otherwise, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain. And any nays? I think we had all these. Okay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Move that we make Commissioner Miller vice chair?
Thank you.
I'd like to second that motion. Unusual, but for chair to second, but I want to. Okay, any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
One abstention. Any nays? Hearing none. Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a good team.
Excellent. Got that out of the way.
Go team.
Okay. Next item, new business 5B, community food assessment. Sean, you wanna do a
Yes,
little
thank you,
intro?
Mr. Chair, and members of the commission. So the 2040 Comprehensive Plan, the sustainability chapter that this commission had worked on, outlined local food goals to include adoption of a community food assessment to identify barriers and gaps in healthy food access within our city. So since last September, the Environmental Natural Resources Commission has partnered with St. Paul Ramsey County SHIP to create a community food assessment for the city. Caitlin Pierce was hired by the St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health Department as an intern to complete that assessment. And through that internship and work on the CFA, which is the acronym, Caitlin will complete her master thesis for the University of Minnesota Master of Public Health program. St. Paul Ramsey County SHIP employees, I guess they're not here tonight, but Caitlin Pierce is here tonight to present to you the final community food assessment. So she's been doing a lot of work on this, has interviewed a lot of stakeholders within our community, met with our local foods subcommittee, and we just are really appreciative of all of her hard work and effort. And we're here to hear from Caitlin. So with that, I welcome Caitlin. They have it in their packet. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, my name is Katie, and I am here to present my community food assessment project for the city of Maplewood. And do I have a? Okay. So in the report, I have an introduction page. And in there, I have some background information and introduction information as to what a community food assessment is. Basically, the purpose of a community food assessment is to identify barriers and gaps in healthy food access and community assets. So essentially, identifying the current food environment and where areas for improvement might be. And then I also, as defined by the USDA, food insecurity is a household-level economic and social condition of limited or uncertain access to adequate food. And some background information, 1 in 10 households in Minnesota experienced food insecurity in 2017, and in Ramsey County, 13% of households experienced food insecurity in 2015, so it's a little higher in Ramsey County compared to the state of Minnesota. And then I also describe availability and accessibility and how those components play into food access for people in a community. Availability refers to the physical location and existence of healthier food in certain areas of a community or in a store specifically, whereas accessibility refers to a broader picture of cost, quality, location, and other socioeconomic barriers that people might face in accessing healthier foods. And like Sean mentioned, the need for a community food assessment was called out in the 2040 Comprehensive Plan for Maplewood, and the guiding question for the assessment was, to what extent is healthier food accessible, affordable, and available for residents of Maplewood? So for the methods, there I did primary data and secondary data. The first primary data collection was a series of informational interviews that I conducted with 16 key stakeholders within the food environment, working within the food system of Maplewood. And those who were interviewed were asked a series of questions regarding strengths and weaknesses of the city, of the food environment, what works well in improving food access, barriers people face, and perceptions of affordability of healthier food. I also looked at secondary data, which was existing survey results. That included the 2018 Community Health Assessment for St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health and the 2017 Minnesota Food Shelf Client Survey for Ramsey County. So from the informational interviews, 10 major themes emerged, and I have a graph outlined in the report that shows the frequency of the themes that were discussed in the interviews. And the one mentioned most often was cost and money. And after that, transportation, location, time or hours of operation, partnering and collaboration, cultural relevance or options, demand for resources, availability of information about resources, knowledge and education, language barriers, and stigma. And in the report, I have a description of what was found in each of those themes and what was identified by the key stakeholders, and then also a quote for each of them. And for the survey data, I pulled out the information that was relevant to a community food assessment. So for the 2018 Community Health Assessment for St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health, they were asked a series of open-ended questions, and the two that I found most relevant were what helps your community stay healthy and what keeps your community from being healthy. And so those were organized by zip code, and so I took the 3 zip codes that are within Menominee, or Maplewood, and put that into the report and what people responded with for the open-ended questions. And then for the 2017 Minnesota Food Shelf Client Survey for Ramsey County, I took the information on there for that described transportation, total food access, and total fruit and vegetable access for information that the clients answered, clients who use the food shelves in Ramsey County. I also have a map on the report that shows the Maplewood neighborhoods and also the zip codes within Maplewood, so that is easier to see. So for the discussion, the responses from the surveys and the key informant interviews describe the current environment, food environment, as having strengths, areas for improvement, and opportunities for change. Recommendations provided based on a combination of findings from the interviews and community responses in the community health assessment and the food shelf client survey. And the recommendations were also developed referencing the Minnesota Food Charter and are similar to the action steps that are outlined in the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. So to go through the recommendations, there are a total of 7, and then I have kind of points underneath each recommendation further describing potential use for this information. The first one being ensure food stores, hunger relief programs, farmers markets, community gardens, and other food sources are located in places easily reached by bus, bike, or foot. So an example underneath there, I have install and maintain sidewalks, metered crosswalks, and bike paths on routes that provide access to these locations. Require sidewalk and bike path standards for all new developments in the city. And then also support the installation of bus stops and bus routes near these community food sources and coordinate bus schedules with the sources' open hours to increase transportation availability throughout the city. For the second one, establish affordable food delivery services that increase mobile food distribution. And this would be supporting programs such as a mobile market that bring food from local stores and farmers markets to seniors, individuals with mobility issues, and people without transportation. Deliver healthy food grown at nearby farms to neighborhood drop-off sites. So those are some examples for that one. And then the third recommendation is support development of a central location for food assistance programs and other community needs. So that would be identify a location for a variety of community needs to be accessed in one space. Support development of a community center that provides resources to people in the area and a safe, welcoming space that decreases stigma and increases accessibility of options. For number 4, support policies and programs that increase purchasing power for healthier foods. And this one falls under the category of affordability. I divided them up into the 3: accessibility, affordability, and availability that were a part of the guiding question. So for this one, incentive programs such as Market Bucks, which is a program that matches SNAP EBT spending at farmers markets, and veggie prescriptions, which is a program that involves healthcare provider prescriptions that can be exchanged for fresh fruits and vegetables. Encourage healthy food purchases and allow people to stretch their dollar. Supporting the use and development of programs such as these at local food stores and farmers markets will increase affordability of healthier foods. Also, partnering with local clinics and farmers markets to establish these programs. Under availability, recommendation number 5 is support existing food assistance programs and development of additional programs to help meet demand in the area. So this would be support development or expansion of food shelves and hunger relief programs to available areas within the city. Number 6 is provide a wider variety of food sources and communities with few options for healthy food. So this would be support the establishment and maintenance of community gardens in new areas of the community or establishment of urban farms in appropriate areas. Encourage edible and pollinator-friendly landscapes on all properties. Support a city policy surrounding the requirement of a fresh food source within half a mile of every residence or in each of the 13 neighborhoods of Maplewood. Support developments that decrease the distance between households and healthy retail food options in order to determine future land use policies and gaps in food access. Reference the food access map that is already in the 2040 comprehensive plan. And integrate community gardens into public housing developments and create incentives for community gardens in affordable housing developments that receive public assistance. And number 7 for the recommendations is increase availability of information about resources available for members of the community. So this could be create an area of the Maplewood website that is updated regularly with information on all resources available for low-income residents, or create a document in various formats and language options that is updated twice per year with information on all resources available for low-income residents and distribute to programs for use in recommending options for clients. Distribute the document to frequently accessed buildings or areas in the city for people to see. So in conclusion, implementing the recommendations developed from the community food assessment would help to increase food security in the city of Maplewood. And the food environment plays an important role in the health of a community, and supporting changes that help create a healthier food environment would be beneficial for all. And so now I want to open it up to questions or comments on any part of the report.
Great.
Feedback. Yes.
I'll start off with a few. First, thank you very much for a beautiful document. It's nice, and I think we're all very much in favor of, broadening our food security and dealing with these issues. So thank you. I have a couple sort of questions on item A, the accessibility, the food stores, hunger relief programs, farmers market, community gardens, and other food sources. As you noted, we've got the food access map in the comprehensive plan. Does that, to your knowledge, include all of those things, or?
It does, I believe. It has food stores, farmers market, community gardens. I'm not sure about the hunger relief programs because it doesn't go into specific details.
Okay,
In the key for the map.
okay.
So it might, but I would have to double check with.
And Sean may know this, but are there databases or anything like that that we could use to make sure that we know where all of those are at within the city?
Not to my knowledge, not
Okay.
more than just general information that's available on the internet. I don't think necessarily everything is listed in one
There's no
place.
source that's collecting that sort of thing.
No.
I know that there is it's farmers markets and fresh food places, but it's not all of those things. But they do have magazines. I can actually bring you some.
Yeah.
That has everything in all of Minnesota,
Yeah.
and it's like per city.
Yeah.
But it doesn't include all of the different things that she's got
The hunger
here.
relief
But it
programs.
it does include quite a few of them.
Yeah.
I think maybe that might be something we could do as a goal, is identifying where on a map
Things are.
these things are, and maybe somewhere where some natural hubs are and some deserts are.
Yeah. Sort of a second question I have is under affordability, the 4A, you talk about some programs like Market Bucks, which I think these are great ideas. Are you aware of funding sources out there for those sorts of things? If the city says, well, yeah, we'd love to do that, but we don't necessarily have the money, is there some
Yeah,
place
there
we
are
can
some
go?
programs that, nonprofit programs and organizations that have market bucks and veggie prescriptions kind of started in different areas of the state. So I would have to talk to them specifically to kind of understand where funding comes from for that.
Okay.
But I don't have a specific answer for
Okay.
the funding source.
Okay.
But that would be further along the line of developing a plan for the findings from the assessment.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Anyone else?
I just had another question. When we are developing policies as part of our goals, would you be available, because I know you have a lot of networking and resources from this, to maybe sit in on a couple of those or be available for
Yeah.
information? Okay,
Yeah, I would.
thank you. Cool.
Commissioner Sin?
I'd like to second Commissioner Redmond's on very good, thorough, easy to understand, well written. I think you did a good job, Katie.
Sorry, what was the?
Thought you did a good job on this, Katie. Very nice.
I'm sorry, I can't
You
hear.
did a good job.
Oh,
Did a good
thank you.
job. I thought I had my mic on. I'll talk louder. Under accessibility 3A, talk about development of a central location. Are you thinking of, is that something like you build a building, or are we talking about something that already exists, like Second Harvest,
It could be either.
or both?
Yeah, so I kind of talked, and people had different ideas. Some of the different stakeholders that I talked to would like to see something like that happen, and they named a few locations that could be potential in developing a central location like that. So it wouldn't be necessarily needing to be something totally from scratch, just kind of building upon resources that the community already has.
Okay. Also, under accessibility 2, you talk about affordable food delivery service.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking there, like, already like Cub Foods and Hy-Vee, making that affordable? Or what do you mean
For
by
the
food delivery service?
food delivery services, so that would be something like mobile food distribution, which would be bringing food from existing like food stores or farmers markets to neighborhood locations and drop sites where people necessarily wouldn't have been able to get food before. So this could be like a mobile food bus or a drop-off site or something like that in an easily accessible location in different areas of the community or in the different neighborhoods.
Thank you.
I have one more question. Under availability, item 5, supporting existing food assistance programs. It's kind of a similar question. Is there? I'm not highly educated in terms of what food assistance programs are out there. Is there again a resource where we can make sure we're educated on what programs exist?
Yeah, so that would even be kind of building upon the point of making all resource information available in one spot and then identifying through there what places could be expanded. I think almost anything that I talked to said that there is a greater need than what they can meet, and expanding would be hugely beneficial. So once all of the resources and programs are identified in kind of a specific location, easily accessible location, then using that to go forward and determine what which ones to support and help.
Okay. Commissioner Miller?
I really want to say how well this is developed from the beginnings of where do you want me to go with this to this document. It's really well done, and I see a lot of potential and opportunity for us to use what you've done to create some policy and to create some goals for this next year, and really kind of delve into making sure that all of the parts and populations in Maplewood really have better access and are able to see where these where food is available, healthy food, and get that information to our families. I really appreciate it. It's really well done, and I'm actually took a picture of your sources already, so we can kind of look into it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Did you happen to find any? Did you find that when you were doing sort of the where people were having food deserts, did it kind of follow population or not, or?
Not as much.
Okay.
Pretty much any part of the city that I talked to identified a greater need.
Okay.
So there wasn't a clear pattern or a clear specific area that was greater than any other, or any of them that said, no, we're fine, this area is
Right.
totally good. So I think from the information that I gathered, there wasn't a specific area that could be identified
Awesome.
as a gap. But that's where the map would come in just looking at physical location of what is actually out there.
Right.
Because the need for food assistance or increased food access appears to be throughout the entire city.
Perfect. Thank you so much, because I'm just excited now to kind of delve into this and start making some steps to getting into this. I appreciate this.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I've got 2 more for you. I was just I'm sorry. The first, how many folks did you interview?
16.
16. Okay. Is there a copy of the questions that you asked accessible somewhere?
I have one, if you want me to read it off to you.
No, that's
or-
okay. Is there any way that we might get a copy of it?
I
Just
can
it'll
send it
help
to you.
us sort of in
Yeah.
the future, perhaps.
Yep. Yeah, there were, I think, around 10 questions.
Okay.
And I can send you the specific questions that I went through with each one.
That'd be great if you can.
Sure.
And then the last is, so is this the completion of your work here, or is there next step that you're engaged in?
For the
or-
school, there's more. I'll be writing a more detailed report of everything, and then defending that in hopefully a month or 2
Okay,
for the school.
great. Morris? Oh,
Mr. Chairman, in addition to your request for a listing of the 16, could we I don't want to get necessarily individual names, but who these people were. What's their background and what role do they play? And the reason I'm asking that is, might there be some benefit in looking at a broader range, broader than just those 16 individuals and what they can bring to this discussion, but to others from within the community itself?
Unfortunately, I can't give any identifiable information of the people that I interviewed to maintain their anonymity, but I have a description of some of the places that I talked to, and because it was formal data collection, it had to be anonymous for the interviews and for the report. But going forward, I think using the recommendations is where you would be able to talk to them specifically and identify who to talk to from there.
Mr. Chairman, can you give a general sense of the nature of the people you were talking to?
Yeah, here I have it. So what I have written in here is...
Yeah, or what qualifies them for having...
Yeah, so the key
opinions.
stakeholders were selected from a variety of places, including food assistance programs that work within the city, schools, community gardens, the farmers market, food shelves, community development programs, and charity or nonprofit organizations. So people that currently work in increasing food access throughout the city, so identifying what they know about the area and where they see areas for improvement and that kind of stuff.
One further question. Was any consideration given to talking with people involved in the kind of the standard everyday grocery stores and, where most of the shopping for food takes place?
So if I were to have talked to members of the community and get their personal experience, that would have required much more in-depth approval process through the Institutional Review Board. So we decided to go with the informational interviews and then use the secondary data, which was not me collecting it, so I could still use the responses from community members so that I get a more well-rounded picture that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your work and your time presenting it tonight.
Thank you.
Good
Mr.
luck with
Chair?
your completion of it.
Thank you.
The question.
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the community food assessment.
Would you approve or receive?
We're supposed to make a motion.
Approval of the assessment.
So we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the motion to approve the community food assessment? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? Motion passes. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to also thank Katie for her work and effort over the last few months. It was a real honor to work with Katie, and I think it's brought a lot of insight to the subject matter for many of us. Our local foods subcommittee, we volunteered at Food Shelf as part of this project, and I think a lot of these implementation strategies we can take and review those tonight for our 2019 goals, see if there's something that we can narrow in. And then I did have this on the staff presentations, but I'll mention it here. So Ramsey County Food and Nutrition Commission meeting, they will be actually spotlighting the City of Maplewood's local foods section from our comprehensive plan. They had reviewed all of the metropolitan area comprehensive plans, and they felt that the City of Maplewood's local foods section had a really good implementation strategy in our plan. So they wanted to spotlight that and present that to their commission. So you are all invited to that March 4th. It's in St. Paul, and that's from 5:30 to 7:30. And I'll send you additional details on that after the meeting. So thank you, Katie, and good luck.
Next item on the agenda is 5C, which is 2019 Environmental and Natural Resources Commission. That's us. Goals. Hey, wait a minute.
We know those people.
I think I know that group. Sean, did you want to do a little oversight on your memo?
Yes, thank you. So just as a recap, the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission ordinance does establish your commission, excuse me, I said that wrong. The ordinance actually states that the commission shall establish environmental priorities for the city in partnership with the city council and recommend changes or new policies that control, protect, preserve, and enhance the city's environmental assets. So yearly, the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission takes some time at the beginning of the year to look at what we can accomplish over the next year to meet that priority establishment. So a recap of last year, your goals. You had two main goals, and they both were based off of the 2040 Comprehensive Plan and the Sustainability Chapter, which your commission worked on. The first one was adopt a climate action and adaptation plan that includes strategies for dealing with the effects of climate change. So I gave you an update in your staff report, and thanks to Ted Redmond and Pale Blue Dot LLC, the city of Maplewood, as well as 3 other cities, have received a grant from the MPCA, the Environmental Assistance Grant, to conduct the climate adaptation portion of that goal. So your commission will begin that work probably in April, I would assume, I think is the plan. So we have that goal now will carry over to 2019. And goal 2 of last year, we just wrapped it up. We're good. And that was the community food assessment. And that was to identify barriers and gaps in healthy food access and community assets. So it was really good timing that Ramsey County SHIP program had offered that opportunity to the city of Maplewood to work with Katie on creating that community food assessment. So great job. One goal down. So now for 2019, I'd like to kind of give you an update on the items that I know will be coming to your commission. And there's 2 main items. One is the trash and recycling contracts. So last night at the city council workshop, city staff was directed to put together an RFP for new contracts for our trash and recycling. So we will bring that information to the commission in March and possibly April, and then we'll have to release that RFP and obtain the proposals, review those proposals, and make recommendations to the city council. So I am assuming that the plan would be to set up a maybe a subcommittee, and that would be made up of 2 or 3 of commission members, perhaps a council member or 2, and staff to review those proposals. So that'll be work in 2019 for this commission. And we'll hear about that starting in March. And then the climate adaptation plan, which I described previously. So those are some action items that you will be looking at. And then during the January commission meeting, the commissioners did recommend that any commissioner that had some ideas about goals for 2019 submit those to city staff. And since that time, Commissioner Redmond and Commissioner Okeson did submit some goals. Commissioner Okeson was just indicating these are kind of variable goals. She has 7 of those, and something that we could promote in 2019. And Commissioner Redmond's are mainly focusing on, I think, our comprehensive goals too, as well, being the tree canopy survey and carbon sequestration study, which of course Mr. Redmond, as part of Pale Blue Dot, had completed that study and presented to the commission. And then advancing renewable energy task force. This was part of our energy goals to really promote the renewable energies to meet our greenhouse gas emission reductions, and then a Maplewood Walkability Review and Action Plan. So I have those outlined as submitted by those commissioners. And then our Environmental and Natural Resources Commission ordinance also speaks to the commission assisting the Maplewood Nature Center with its goals and achieving those. So before you, I had put together the goals as they had outlined them to me. They recently had a goal-setting session. They have one every year as well. So I am going to go over that with you here. I'm going to pull that up on my computer. But I have just the main topics there in front of you. Bear with me here. So first of all was complete the master plan for the Nature Center and grounds. And I apologize, it's not on the overhead. It's actually just on a large tablet in front of the commissioners here. I don't know if you can get that on the camera. Probably not.
That's not it.
Here, I have an idea.
Take a picture of it, or hold it up.
Where's that from?
I don't know where that camera is. Oh, you're getting closer.
One was right over here somewhere. Oh, right there.
Oh. Put it.
It's right on top of the computer,
Here.
or where the computer is.
All right. Here we go.
Oh, sweet.
We're going old school.
Keep going, there you go.
There you go.
Excellent.
Look at that.
That's,
Tech savvy lady.
This is high tech.
Ah,
that's right.
got to be adaptable in this day and age. Okay. Complete master plan for the Nature Center and grounds, and a few of the commissioners have been participating in the master planning process. The Nature Center, they really haven't done a master plan in many years, so they're going to be completing that within the next few months. Identify 2019 recommended capital improvement projects from the master plan, and write a request for proposals to be sent out to the appropriate contractors. So the implementation strategies that will be outlined in the master plan, they then will define how to fund those projects. Coordinate with Public Works on the curbing and wetland reconstruction as part of the East 7th Street reconstruction. Advocate for the reconstruction of the Nature Center parking lot. So the roadway going into the Nature Center over this next year will be reconstructed. So that's always an opportunity to make improvements to stormwater management, and there's that wetland next to the Nature Center. So again, doing some stormwater improvements to protect that wetland. Finish up Edgerton Garden Project by June. Celebrate the new improvements with a garden ribbon cutting and celebrate on that day. Have Public Works run an irrigation test, measure plots, install new stakes and ADA beds, bench, and arbor. So that'll all happen in the spring. And then plant pollinator strips with Edgerton school classes as part of that project. So item number 6. I feel like I missed something here. Oh, 5. Work with the city's communication department to create an educational video on stormwater or trees. Conduct an Arbor Day special event to educate about the value of trees and promote Tree City USA on Saturday, May 4th, 2019. Promote awareness and inclusivity of cultural and racial groups through volunteer and staff training and translated nature programs. And then finally, provide nature education activities for special events such as Halloween and the WOW events. So those are the Nature Center goals as outlined for this year. So any time we can help coordinate with the Nature Center to help them meet their goals, of course, is always very beneficial. And I see there's maybe some events that we could attend as a commission as well. So with that, I don't know, in the past, we had a big board and we were brainstorming and So I'll leave it to you as to how you want to proceed. So with that, I open it to the commission.
If I may, for just a couple of questions on the Nature Center. First of all, that's a great list, and I'm happy to hear all the things that they've got on their list. As they assembled that to share with us, is there any of those items that they're definitely like, hey, we really need help with this item that you're aware of?
I didn't have time to discuss that. I just got the list this afternoon. I think
Okay.
they just did the meeting a week or two ago, so I do not know.
And because of the, I mean, they're all great things, and I'm sure we're happy to support them as a commission. Certainly, the educational events, we've participated in that before. I'm sure we'll be happy to do that again. But I look as I look at this list, one of the things that jumps out beyond the master plan and the CIP, supporting those things. Item 7, the inclusivity of cultural and racial groups, is an interesting topic, a great topic, and it also has interesting overlap with some of the conversations that we tend to have related to climate adaptation, climate vulnerability, the food accessibility that we just heard about. Those feel like they're interrelated to me. So, do you know if have they established sort of an approach for that they're going to be following, or is it on their list that we're going to be doing this and they haven't really organized that yet? Do you know?
Well, I apologize. Ann Hutchinson couldn't make it here tonight. They had to actually reschedule part of their master planning visioning meeting tonight because of, I think, the weather conditions, whenever that was, last week that it was supposed to be held. So I wish she was here, but she was not. But as I recall from the one master planning meeting that I went to, there was the discussion of inclusivity, and we discussed the fact that the Nature Center programming in and of itself opens up the opportunities for inclusivity. And so kind of coordinating more and focusing more on that. On the programming piece.
Okay, awesome. Commissioner Sin, and then Commissioner Belzer, then Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. What I'd like to do, I'd like to add an additional recommendation for goals for 2019. I'd like to develop a plan to establish or install electric charging stations around the city of Maplewood.
Awesome.
That's it.
Commissioner Belzer?
I wanted to address your question, the inclusivity and cultural and racial groups. I believe that came out of the master plan. Like, I did attend one of those meetings, and there was some good discussion about who interacts with the Nature Center currently and who isn't, and how maybe some program changes and outreach could impact more people coming to the Nature Center as a whole, of language barrier and things like that, just trying to be more creative with who they're reaching.
Okay.
That seemed to be the
gist of
Yeah,
where they're, okay.
yeah.
All right, cool. Commissioner Miller?
Yep. I was kind of sketching what we were talking about as we were going for goals, and I have trash and recycling, 2 climate adaptation plan, 3 tree canopy survey and carbon sequestration study, 4 advancing renewable energy task force, 5 walkable livable communities, 6 the Nature Center goal and helping them with those. I kind of would really like to start kind of focusing on, I know a lot of these things that we're talking about could be in one of those things. Like the walkable community could take care of developing the charging stations, which I think is really important because that's part of accessibility and transportation and food services, all that kind of thing. Wondering if we should, I think normally what we did last year was we kind of identified the big overhanging goals and then kind of broken to subcommittees. for those, so the people on the subcommittees could really sort of just jump right in. And so I'm hoping that we can do something like that. So I guess maybe identifying some goals. I'm thinking of trash recycling, having those 6 goals: trash recycling, climate adaptation plan, tree canopy survey, advancing renewable, walkable communities, and nature center goals. If anybody has anything that's sort of encompassing another area besides those things. If that would be something we could kind of focus on, because I mean, oh my gosh, I'm ready.
I
It's gonna
have,
be exciting year.
I like the sort of contraction that you're starting to suggest, like let's start to focus. But before we contract, I have one more expansion item to
Yeah.
put on the throw out there. And at the city council meeting last night, I did suggest that both in order to maintain Maplewood's leadership in terms of environmental aspects and sustainability within the metro area, but more importantly, understanding that because we've achieved a certain level, but we have further to go, the sorts of things that we're going to be addressing continue to get more and more complex. And if we want to continue to address them, addressing climate issues, addressing transportation discussions, addressing food security, and looking at those things, I suggested that it was probably time for the city to establish a budget that could then be used to address these things. And I said, it doesn't have to be a massive budget, it doesn't have to be millions of dollars, but something that could be planned for, anticipated, and regular, so that then Sean and the larger department, as well as us as a commission, could even identify like, hey, why don't we do X next year? Well, what does it take to do that? What can we do in-house? What can we do voluntarily? What do we need to purchase or support with some funding? So with that, and I would say that the reception at the council was nobody hit me, so that was good.
Did they throw stuff?
And
Anything at you?
nobody threw anything at me, nobody got angry, so that was all good. And there was some support, I'd say, well, why don't you guys, yeah, we would like your help on trying to establish a budget. So I would like to just put that on the
Yeah.
table, as that could be a subcommittee or somebody to just explore between now and when budgeting for 2020 occurs. What would an appropriate and reasonable and hopefully effective budget for environmental and sustainability efforts, whatever we want to call that, that we could then recommend with like uses, and maybe even help with identifying some suggested potential sources or something. So like a finance and a budget committee, perhaps, I don't know.
Sure.
So, yes, sir.
So, how was it left with the city council? Were you did you say you were going to prepare something, or you said you're going to come back, or did they just say goodbye, or what? I'm just
It wasn't,
wondering
it
what we
wasn't
should
very
do.
formal. It wasn't very formal in that, because we were just talking about just a brief update on what the commission has done this year.
I'm just wondering if they are going to be receptive to asking for a budget. That's what my question is. I don't want to waste any time if they're just going to say,
The only official comment that I received back, and there were two that made the comment, but the only response beyond smiling and nodding heads was, we would like your assistance with that. So, but there is nobody's made a formal, like, we didn't get a motion to put together a budget or anything
Just
like
seeing
that.
if you're open to it first.
So we could do a preliminary, run it up the internal flagpole, just to say, hey, the commission's interested in, actually, we're gonna take you up on this.
that's what I would suggest.
And just
Yeah.
run it internally and say, if this is gonna run into, if this is gonna be inappropriate, please tell us now, otherwise hold your peace, we're gonna put something together for your consideration and budgeting. Is probably what I would suggest.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a lot of sense, because we're working a lot of times on trying to save the city money. So if we're doing that, it makes sense to give us some sort of
Yes.
a budget to continue trying to save them more money.
Yeah.
And
Well,
a place for people to donate to, a place for people to be involved
Yes.
in that way. Cool.
So that's just another item
Ah,
added.
that's great.
Are there any other ideas that people want to throw on the dartboard before we start thinking about organizing and contracting and that sort of thing?
I was just going to say, I'd like to get this contracted down to like maybe 3 or 4. I just think that's the size of this group. We're going to have to do committees, different things. I know in the past, I think we've kind of stick with like 3 or 4. So I kind of recommend that again. It's kind of hard, but maybe we can kind of squeeze them under the umbrella. Like, I'm not sure how, but we don't want to get overburdened here. Otherwise, we're going to get watered down.
I think that's a wise statement.
And I think we should kind of maybe, like the nature center goals, we can support them, but they're not really doing an ask for us. So I'm not sure that's one of our goals, just to, they're part of us. That we'll just support them in what they're doing and be a resource for them. So I don't really feel like that's our goal.
Yeah. I'd say that's correct, and we're committed to making ourselves available to help with education,
Right.
with showing up at special events. They just enlist our help.
And the things that we don't have control over, like trash and recycling, we're going to have to do that. That has to be one of our goals, kind of a thing. So just the things we have to, and then maybe decide on the other ones.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
So the 2040 comprehensive plan, of course, had a lot of implementation strategies. We should always look to that to see if there's anything we can accomplish. And I think we had the energy section and the local food section, and completing this community food assessment was, one of the top goals. And then all the implementation strategies that were outlined in this assessment. You should take a close look and see if there's anything in here that perhaps we could champion this year. And then the top goal for energy was completing this climate adaptation plan, but of course it also included the mitigation piece. So I think, once you have that plan in place, then of course it trickles down with all the more detailed implementation, which includes, electric charging stations, things of that nature. So I just wanted to outline and remind you of the 2040 comprehensive plan.
Commissioner Miller?
I think that's a great idea. I guess I kind of envisioned the walkable, livable communities. One of the big focuses of that is the food stability, but that's just a part of it. And so I wanted to make sure that that's in there. And I do know from the process that I was just in that Tim Walls is going to be looking at walkable communities as one of his state goals. So that would be helpful if we are in line. They're calling them livable instead of walkable communities. But I know that that's a focus, and we could possibly collaborate in that way for that. And I know that was that was in the 2040 strategic plan as well. So I know that would kind of go a line, and it would allow us to really, the very first thing we can really look into is the food stability in those areas. But just to kind of have it all in that area. I mean, under that umbrella of walkable/livable communities, that would include that.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, any other adds or comments? Otherwise, perhaps what we do, I do think sort of whittling it down to say perhaps 3, and if we think of it in terms of sort of task force to some degree, if a topic does need a task force, that's awesome. I'm not trying to create a whole bunch of task force, but the idea that if we identify umbrella, we could always break into smaller groups where a couple of us try to define within that umbrella, what does that mean? And that's identify a thing we can do this year and a few things that we can do in the next couple of years, right?
I guess I kind of saw the walkable, livable communities as kind of like our urban agriculture, where it's sort of the thing we're doing, and then we just take a piece of it and bite it, chew on it, not doing it all at once. But we need to consider things like, remember how we did that, where it was actually, God, I gotta stop knocking into that thing, where the umbrella was walkable. Was urban agriculture, and then we divided it in. And that's kind of how that would set that up, as I was kind of envisioning.
But these goals are so large that we don't necessarily have to think that we have to get it done that year.
Right.
To start on it and continue on.
Just to say we're looking at it.
Most of them are not going to be able to get done
Right.
in a year. So that's
Right.
As a starting point, 2019.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that we are all, I think, big thinkers. We have big plans, we have big ideas, we generate lots of big ideas. And I think it's nice for us to establish some things that have legs to it, because that's what will make this commission stronger in the next 10 years. But your point's a fantastic one, that it'd be kind of nice to have, 2 things, 3 things that we actually get done not that we don't get, but a thing that actually gets implemented, right? Or an action that's in support of a bigger thing. As an example, so like energy is on my list, and, it shows up in a few suggestions here from a few folks. Well, we've established renewable energy goals, but that isn't just going to happen on its own. Right. It'll happen to an extent on its own, but if we really want to seriously achieve the goals that we have as a city, we need to help contribute something to that, to instigate, to lead, to educate, to create an environment for something to occur. So like the idea of putting together, and I've mentioned this a few times in different venues, but the idea of like a group purchasing campaign. So we've done the Solar Top 30. We did solar assessments for the 98 folks that were in the energized Maplewood, and the 10, 11, 12 businesses that were in that also. And we're going to be adding another top 10, so we'll do a Solar Top 40. Those solar potentials exceed our first energy goal. So, well, then what? So we've given some information, but there are strategies that we could take to say, well, what do we do now as a next step? And I think this commission could, either in a subcommittee or some form of it, could explore what are the couple options that we could take. Let's pick one and do it this year. Let's make this happen, whether it's educational venues or seminars or training or workshop or a group purchase campaign where we help promote, hey, we can help organize and buy down the cost of solar on anybody that's interested. And the city will just play a role in helping to make that happen, whatever. So there's like a dozen ideas. Or in the walkability and EV and transit, there's a couple real things that we could do that would further our goals there, where it's like, hey, let's identify where we'd love to see, 5 EV charging stations in the city or whatever,
Right.
and make a map.
Make a map.
And
That's
then
it.
explore what are the options, what are strategies that we might be able to do to encourage that? Is there funding for it or whatever?
Right.
So I like your point that to try to identify a couple specific things as well as broad picture.
We can always add if we get at the accomplishments, but just so it looks like we're not just planning, but actually taking it to the next step when we can.
Yeah. So, and if we say we've got we try to do 3 things, maybe, or 2, maybe 4, but 3 is a good starter. Trash we know we're dealing with, because we have to. And Sean, it looks like we'll have the ability to talk, because it talks about reviewing solid waste goals and objectives in preparation. So we could, as a part of that, we could have could we have a dialogue related to what would it take to do compost collection, for instance, or what are options that might relate to compost? Is that something that could be a part of that conversation?
Yes.
Okay,
So we'll discuss all that in March.
cool. So that could be a good, healthy topic. Yes, ma'am.
Just have a question for staff. thinking of some of the things that we're talking about. A lot of times that requires a lot of legwork on your part. With Chris Swanson having left, a few months ago, is that a position that's being backfilled that gives you additional support, or are some of these things with the MPCA grant and the contracts for both recycling and trash hauling? Is that something that's going to take up most of your time that we shouldn't be adding too much to it? Or if we're adding to it with the knowledge that that's on us to commit to more frequent meetings, us doing the research and legwork to come into those subcommittee meetings, as opposed to simply making decisions. The staff reports are always very thorough, so we're armed with good information when we come into meetings. But if that's not realistic for your workload, then
Superb question.
we shouldn't
Yeah.
pile on.
Well, as long as your goals are fun, I'm all for it.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. In all seriousness, Chris Swanson, yes, what a loss. I really
Yeah.
miss him. But what is happening currently, they are filling his code enforcement
Okay.
position, because he was part-time code, part-time environmental specialist.
Yeah.
And then more of the environmental work then would come to me, and the theory is that some of the planning work that I have been doing would go elsewhere, in theory.
Okay. Theoretically.
But again, if it's fun, bring it my way. No, I love this work. You
How about
kidding?
trash?
I love it.
Trash bag.
Is that about fun? Trash?
Trash. Yeah, I love talking trash. And we get to do that again this year. So I think what I'm hearing is some main themes, and I think it's good to kind of break that down, and so then you can narrow in on what your goals might be. So I'm going to jot down a few things that I've been hearing.
Okay. And while she's doing, and just before I see Commissioner Miller's hand up, let me shed a little bit of light in terms of the climate adaptation planning effort, what that might look like, and so that we can anticipate that as a part of the conversation. So the climate adaptation grant that's been received pays for adaptation, does not cover mitigation, so it won't be including things like transitioning to renewable energy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, those sorts of things, other than some of the fringe sorts of strategies that do overlap with adaptation. But this is explicitly towards climate adaptation. So strategies looking at climate vulnerable populations and what can we do to help strengthen that, and other climate adaptive strategies. That probably will start June, and I say probably only because contracting through MPCA is a little bit behind schedule right now. So I'm anticipating in June that it starts, and that process will look like, first we'll start off with a review with staff, not just Sean, but perhaps others, sort of a steering committee. We'll start off reviewing what data and information we have available now, and talk about the range of potential strategies, and just start sort of feeling that out a little bit. But we will do 2 rounds of community engagement. And exactly what those engagement efforts look like, we'll design with staff. But 1 round will be once we have all the background information and a range of, here's the kinds of strategies that you can do. That first engagement is to help share that with folks and to get their thoughts, their input, their feelings, their ideas about things that they're concerned about, solutions they think people should do, et cetera. We will then develop an adaptation plan, a draft, that will have refined strategies in it, and a draft implementation plan that says, okay, if these are the 20 strategies, who's doing what, and what's the implementation timeframe and so forth. And then we'll do a second round of community engagement where we can share that and get feedback. The schedule is such that we'll probably be doing the first round of community engagement, say, this fall, September, October-ish. And then the second round of community engagement, say, March, something like that. And so certainly this commission and other commissions could be looking at a draft. You probably want to have a draft plan kind of shared with the commission prior to the second round of community engagement, just so everybody has a chance of throwing out more ideas and so forth. So that'll be maybe January, February, something like that, somewhere in that range. And the commission could certainly be engaged in anywhere along the way, but what would be great is to have commissioner engagement at the public engagement efforts, if at all possible, just to be part of that dialogue and to help, lead groups or encourage people to contribute, that sort of thing. Table. So that gives a sense as to what that might look like in terms of commitment from the group, and that it will extend into 2020 as far as, actually looking at a plan and figuring out what we think about that. And then from a staff time perspective, it certainly Sean will have some staff or some time in it, because she'll be participating in the engagement, participating in the internal staff meetings and so forth, and helping us get those organized. So there is some time for that. But hopefully there's a little bit of space left over, especially if it's fun. Yeah, if it's fun, and if we get that other planning staff that can help us hog up more of Sean's time.
So it's really hard to narrow in on goals when you can't just depend on staff. Of course, it has to be something that you can participate in as well. And last year with our re-energized Maplewood program, of course, the grant was funded through Metro Certs, and Ted Redmond with Pale Blue Dot, of course, assisted with that as both the business person and the commissioner, so that was very helpful. And I think anything we can do to expand that, those energy, now that we have like actual energy programs that we're promoting, so I think that would be a great next step for this year, under that energy category to advance our renewable energy goals. And then I kept hearing accessibility. It seems like you want to kind of explore that. We do have in our transportation plan a lot of those details already about, missing links within the city as far as accessibility. So you might find that some of that work is already done. It's just how do we get to the point of implementing those missing links. And normally it comes when there's a road improvement project in the area, things like that. And part of that comprehensive plan, the energy goals, it did include green economy, business and economic development potential study. So I think that would fall along the lines of, the energy piece and working with the businesses to promote that, the renewable energies.
Yeah, I think it could feed into that.
Mm-hmm. So I think last year you did a good job of narrowing it down to 2, and we actually accomplished 1 totally.
When I raised my hand before, my question was going to be, are we looking for goals to work on, or are we looking to have quantitative measurable goals to complete? Because usually we're like, hey, we have to do this, and then within that goal category we would complete some process or some policy, we would get a policy that looked at that or whatever. So I don't know, do you guys think that you want to have our goals be achievable, measurable, quantitative substance, or ideas for us to look into about getting kind of narrowing into measurable goals?
Well, I think in this year coming up, we could do both. I mean, the trash and recycling contract is going to be something that's going to accomplish a goal. So we could probably do both. We could do that and then maybe take another one. Would be more of a planning nature, I don't know, but with some real goals that we could achieve for the following year. So maybe we should just try to stick with 2.
We'll have these 3 plus
I think when you're calling out trash, that's something that we have to do.
Yeah.
So you really shouldn't outline it as a goal. Same with the climate adaptation. Oh, yeah. We put, oh, you're one of those, you want to put it on the list so you can just cross it off. I see.
Yeah, I think in the past, the things that we can cross off have always been ordinance related.
Right.
Or trash recycling review related. So I don't know. I love lists where you can you write the thing you've already done and then you can cross it off. Not that we've already done it, but that we know that we will be spending time on it. And
Well, in the food assessment, we didn't do. She did. I mean, we were part of the conversation.
Yeah, we approved it.
it's not nothing.
But we were, I like how you did, I like how you did the goals and then the update, which kind of specified what we accomplished in that goal. Because I think that's, excuse me, kind of what look at it, she's gonna put it on there. I love it. Love it.
I'd kind of like to suggest that, because Commissioner Miller's question about, do we want an action that we can cross off, that we can measure and we did and we cross it off, or do we want ideas? That's kind of what I was hearing. And I kind of like both, honestly. And I think it would be fantastic if we could get in the habit that through the year, we're doing a little bit of committee work. Now, it doesn't have to be a ton, but just a little bit that starts setting up for the next year. Because if we did some dreaming this year of ideas that, hey, what if we did this, what if we did that, and then you can refine that a little bit and establish some goals that then come forward for the following year. So that then we're not taking up actually a meeting like this to do the blue sky discussion. We've actually already had that, or we can have updates along the way. So I think it would be fantastic if we could figure out a way to transition into that, where we're doing a little bit of blue sky all along through the year to establish what we really want to do the next year. And those come out in actionable items.
Okay.
Do A, do B, do C, and get it done. You know what I'm saying? You know what I
Okay,
mean?
so would it make sense to say, come up with 2 policy suggestions that would assist in our goal towards accessibility? You know what I'm saying? Because, we can always do more, but just to come up with 2 solid policies to bring forth to council to address some of our accessibility issues, or the food accessibility, if you want to be more specific. You know what I mean? Like, is that something closer to what you're thinking?
As a
or-
goal?
Yeah.
It could be that, or it could be, because like another way of being like really concrete would be saying like walkability. Let's do a map that shows us where you can walk and where you can't. Because when I put that my item forth,
Right.
there is a stretch of all of County Road C you cannot walk on.
Right.
And I actually pass some folks that I consider neighbors. They don't actually live next to me, but I see them, they're in wheelchairs going down the side
Right.
of that road with piles of snow. It makes me very sad as a city that that's happening.
Right.
So like, that would be an actionable goal that says, we're going to look at what streets don't have sidewalks and what can we do about getting better accessibility in those locations, right? So that would be an actionable item that you actually cross off the list.
Now, would that be something that we would do, like because one of the things that I had on here was identify areas in Maplewood. Actually, the map that I was hoping that somebody was going to bring up was mapping where all the food points are in Maplewood, so we could find where maybe natural hubs are, where maybe the food deserts are, or maybe, that kind of thing. So, actually creating a map. Where I actually had one done, where it would be, I'm gonna knock that thing, I never do that, like this, where it would be, here's where this market is, here's where the community garden is, here's where, this kind of thing, to kind of show where the groupings are, or if there's this whole area that has nothing, and kind of take into consideration the other things. So would a goal be to create a map to identify areas of food stability or areas of food access?
That could be, yeah.
Okay, so you want to, because I'm worried about being so specific,
Mm-hmm.
and we're only going to have 2 or 3, that's, you know what I mean? Because, I mean, we could do, underneath, if we had a subcommittee for local food, we would say, okay, create this map is one of the things we're going to do, identify food deserts, and then come up with a policy to address that. You know what I mean? That would all be underneath a general goal of local food. So I'm just, we're basically, besides Commissioner Palzer, we're all fairly new. And that's just the experience that I've had being on this. And so I'm just curious, because we can have it be whatever we want. It's us, So what do you envision? Something along those lines where you have something so specific as a goal? Or specific things after we meet as a subcommittee to kind of pinpoint the things we want to accomplish?
Well, I guess that's a question for all of us, perhaps, because from my perspective, I think it'd be great if we had a couple subcommittees that were reporting back to us, like, here's some suggestions, or, hey, we're studying this and we're seeing this as an issue, and the next quarter, we're going to try to identify some things that we could do about it, and then come back, So I think it'd be kind of awesome if we had the capacity and the ability to have a couple subcommittees where people are saying, hey, I'd spend extra time to go do that. And then have those subcommittees tasked with do some blue sky, do some identification of potential opportunities and issues, and bring forth a project for next year or something like that. Meanwhile, I think this item 1 that Sean's written, that's an explicit thing that we can do. And I think if it's on the list, I kind of feel like we need to do it, because if that could help us further other actions, right? If we did evolve into a thing where we've got a little bit of funding to do some things, then we could start identifying what do we want to do with funding. And how can we establish further goals for the city,
Right.
Energy, I think, is maybe more of a subcommittee thing. I mean, I have some explicit ideas, but I think we all have explicit ideas, so that might be a subcommittee kind of a conversation for let's get together and talk. Doing an EV map that's an explicit thing, and we can just do that,
Got something, please? Maybe for now, we could at least come up with 2 or 3 goals that we want to start working on and assign some subcommittees. And the easiest one to start would be the trash recycling. And I've got a lot of experience in solid waste. I'd like to be on that committee.
Okay, awesome.
And we can kind of go from there with establish some other goals that we would like to do for 2019.
On the trash and recycling, we're going to be on a bit of an accelerated process to get that RFP released by May. But then, of course, we'll have the subcommittees kind of looking at the proposals after the fact.
Okay.
So I'm not sure it's too much about the goal setting, but actually participating in the process.
Okay.
But certainly, yeah, subcommittee for that.
Okay.
I would like to, as long as the accessibility isn't, I think if we just left it as accessibility right now, understanding that is going to have a lot of tiers underneath it, I would like to move that having explore sustainability budget, energy, accessibility, trash and recycle contracts completed, and strategic planning be
Our goals for the moment until we can come up with maybe on some sort of subcommittee level, some actual measurable goals be our goals for the Environmental Natural Resource Commission for 2019.
Yes, and we can refine those.
Correct.
Because it's getting late.
Have that done for tonight, and then we can come up with more specific goals on subcommittees.
Perhaps creating these subcommittees, the main themes you want, and then those goals come from there.
So, I'm sorry, I was trying to track what you were saying as you were saying it. Were you were, I think you made a motion.
Yes.
Would you mind repeating the motion?
Sure. Understanding that there are many subpoints underneath each of these goals, I am making a motion to have our overlaying goals for the Environmental Natural Resource Commission for 2019 include, number 1, explore sustainability budget, number 2, energy, number 3, accessibility, number 4, trash and recycling contracts, and 5, providing some sort of strategic planning with subcommittees, and that's it. I'm just going to say that right now.
Those are the goals?
The goals, as of right now, so we can have our goals somewhere to focus our subcommittees to make more measurable goals underneath those.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so. And then would each of those be a subcommittee, or these are?
They could be if they needed it.
Okay.
Correct. Like the trash and recycling, we won't need one until we get the contracts to look at. Because we don't do anything with that. We just get the information when they come in, and we look over their contracts to get input from those. And for all of the other things, there's a lot of work to be done on each step underneath. And some work is already being done, like you said, underneath the energy. And, we would have to have a subcommittee underneath the budget to kind of figure out what we would need to accomplish some of our other goals. In line with the 2040 strategic goals for our city.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second for that motion?
Can you say them again, please, to make sure I understand exactly?
Okay. I will say it without all the other stuff. How about?
Okay.
All right.
Write them down, or
I make a motion, Molly Miller, Commissioner, on the Environmental Natural Resource Commission for 2019, that our goals include, number 1, explore sustainability budget or sustainability budget, 2, energy, 3, accessibility, 4, trash and recycling contracts, and 5, strategic planning. With the understandable, we can add subcommittees under each of these for more specific goals.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I make a comment on that. Those don't strike me as goals. They strike me as subject areas. And that we need, for each of them, to develop goals.
Right.
What we want to do within those subject areas. So if you'll accept that caveat, in effect, that, then I would second the motion.
Don't call them goals.
No, call them
Call them what?
subject areas within, because right now, none of those
Except the first one.
include a specific goal.
Just categories.
Yeah, they're categories.
Mr. Chair,
And more work is needed to
Yes,
be
Sean.
done.
to help facilitate, what I think I am hearing is that the creation of subcommittees in those general areas would be in order, and those subcommittees then would determine the actual goal within that area, focus area.
Yes. That, I think that could make sense. We would want to then have, I think, because it's February already, we would want those committees to meet pretty quickly, so that then maybe even by next month, we can say, hey, this is what we think maybe we could get done this year, and maybe what we'll do for the future. And I think also we would want to make sure that we have only as many subcommittees as we have bodies interested in being on them,
That's exactly right.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Commissioner Bodelman second the motion, but
did you?
it's not goals, it's actually just kind of categories for now. What do you call it?
Focus areas. How about I make a motion for the Environmental Natural Resource Commission for 2019 to focus our goals on those 5 areas that, I don't want to say too much. And the focus areas where we could have subcommittees to form measurable goals. I don't know how to say that better.
I can't help you.
Okay.
I think you have,
You've
I think
got-
you have three subject areas. You have your budgeting, your energy, and your accessibility. And you want three subcommittees to do strategic planning in those areas. And then the trash and recycling, we can discuss that in March when we bring that forward for the RFP.
Right.
That necessarily wouldn't be a so-called subcommittee. It would be part of a task force, I think, overall with the city that will be reviewing the proposals and so forth. So I don't think you need a formal recommendation and a motion and all this. I think if you agree on those three subject areas, I can, and maybe you even form the task force tonight, we could meet with those task force and then bring back some more implementation strategies on how to, number one, define those goals within those focus areas, and then how we're going to implement that over the year.
We do have a motion on the floor, so that would require us to either withdraw the motion or somebody could put forth a substitute motion for consideration.
I will withdraw all of the motions.
Do we have, so,
We don't have to pass a motion, we just have to discuss and recommend.
yes.
Yeah.
So-
Perfect.
But,
Thank
so
you.
the
That's what I was
discussion in my
looking for.
mind is, what Sean just articulated, which I think did a nice job of capturing all of our babbling.
She's the ringmaster of
You know,
wanna get
budget,
home.
accessibility, and energy is subcommittees. And out of each of those, they could come back with a recommendation for either an actionable thing or a goal kind of, a conceptual framework that they want to work on. If that were the case, that would be three subcommittees, and there's, how many of us? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of
There's
us?
6 and hopefully a 7th if we had a new commissioner.
Yeah. Is there a new commissioner being entertained right now?
Applications have been received, and the city council will be interviewing those within the next month.
And there is a potential candidate here to sit on our lovely
Yes,
commission?
uh-huh.
Okay. So we got 6 right now that we know of. Would each of us be willing to be on one of these committees, subcommittees?
It depends.
It depends.
Yes, I would.
Okay. All right,
I'll be
so
on one if I get what I want. No, I'm just kidding.
be the
Just
first
kidding.
one to jump
Just
on the
kidding.
committee.
I want to have fun too.
Okay. So that being the case, then, because I just want to test out if these are the 3 right committees, because if it is, then we're done, I think,
Done,
right?
Right, that's right.
So just informally, like show of hands, who is interested or willing to be on a budget subcommittee?
Oh.
Do we have
I want to be on the other two.
okay, all right, so that's a committee,
I'm good with
subcommittee
budgets,
of
too.
right now.
Can we be on
How about-
more, can we be on more than one?
You could be,
Oh, yeah.
yes, yeah, if you're willing to.
I'll be on the budget with you.
Okay. And then how about the accessibility, which could include EV, food? I mean, it could be whatever the accessibility subcommittee wants it to be, but, so we've got a couple folks that are interested in that at least. Okay.
Beautiful.
And again, this isn't, we can assign ourselves later, but and how about an energy subcommittee? Is there an interest in an energy subcommittee? Okay. Is there another topic or a subcommittee that somebody would want to suggest in lieu of one of these? Or modify this idea of having, whether it's these 3 subcommittees or something else?
Can we just stick with these 3? If we
Yeah,
like-
we can, I just want to test it out to make sure, do we feel good about this, or is there a better idea that
Yeah.
somebody
I feel good
feels?
about
I think we can put anything under these 3.
I don't think that we should add anything else. I think these are all very far-reaching. I mean, these could take a lot of time and energy. So I think keeping focused, instead of getting too spread out, would be pretty critical with actually making movement, progress on these things. So I don't think any more should be added.
Okay. Do we feel good about these 3? Would we want to condense down from 3 to 2? Anybody have recommendation to do that, or an art?
Whether they
discussion?
want 3 or 2.
I think they're good.
As long as we've got subcommittees.
Okay, so we just sort of loosely threw up our arms. Based on that loosely throwing up our arms, we've got budget, which is Commissioner Sin, Commissioner Redmond, energy, which is Commissioner Sin, Commissioner Miller, and accessibility, which is Commissioner Buttleman, Commissioner Miller. How many can we have? We can have 3
3.
people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that might leave it open to people who are not here today.
Yeah. Okay. Do we feel good about moving forward with that? Any reservations or, okay. All right, so why don't we give that a whirl? Then, for the budget, then, I'll sort of start that and throw out a date to get something going.
Okay.
And then, who on the energy wants to be the person that's gonna call the question and make sure that discussion starts?
It doesn't matter.
Right.
Sure. Because I'm all about the accessibility energy's part of it, so. But
So you-
accessibility for sure, and energy, I have some things kind of starting, so I'll connect with,
What I'd suggest is perhaps for each of those, I'm just thinking if we can have somebody that says, okay, you're responsible to get it going. And then to get it going, it's like identify some times. And what I would do is invite all the, let it be known to all the commissioners if you want to actually tap into this, let me know.
okay.
So that you can, just in case it goes from 2 to 3, you know
Okay.
what I'm saying? So we could, so I'll send out a note to everybody, hey, we're gonna try to have a budget on this date or this date. If you want to be involved, let me know. Otherwise,
Okay.
it's Commissioner Sin and Commissioner Redmond.
Right.
Okay. So you'll do that for.
Yep, I'll connect right now, possibly after the meeting, to get a first date that we can kind of collaborate on to see if, some choices of a first date where we can get together.
For which committee?
Both.
For both of them?
Yep.
Okay. Righty. Okay, good. I think I heard a whinny, but I think the horse is dead. Are we good?
Mr. Chair, we also
it is.
bring back these kind of refined goals for your information and kind of outline how you'll implement those during your next meeting.
Yes.
So I'll bring a summary
Okay.
to the commission.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your clearing the fog for us here.
Thank you.
She does that for me a lot. She's really good.
Okay, resolution for appreciation of Ryan Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. When a citizen member ends their time of service on a board or commission, the city considers adoption of a resolution of appreciation recognizing the individual for their time committed to serving on the Maplewood Committee. Ryan Reese, as we know, resigned as a member of the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission after his term expired on September 30th, 2018, and that was after a 3-year term. So tonight, we are looking for a motion to approve a resolution of appreciation for Ryan Reese.
Commissioner Miller?
I would like to make a motion to approve a resolution of appreciation for Environmental and Natural Resource Commissioner Ryan Reese.
I'll second. Any discussion on that motion?
I'm very sad that he's leaving. He was a very important part of, he brought a view that we didn't have at that time,
Yeah,
and we don't, and we're going to miss him for sure.
I agree. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you. I'll move on then to
Please.
rules of procedure. And this, as you recall, came before the commission due to the fact that the city council changed its policy on its rules of procedure, removing the visitor presentation portion from its agenda. So we wanted to make it consistent along all commissions and boards, and we recommended that for your rules of procedure. And your commission had a few questions, and requested, number one, that the visitor presentation section not be removed entirely, but be changed to state scheduled visitors. And then the rules of civility be outlined in each of the agendas for information of any visitors that might be attending. And then there's a few other minor changes, so I am open for questions on that.
Commissioner Miller?
I still have a really strong feeling about this. I feel like we are a commission and we need to welcome people. I went to a few other things, and I understand at the city council level, they have a much more strict and a much more attended situation. If we change the name of it, not necessarily to scheduled people, because I don't think that sometimes with the weather and kids, you never know if you can show up, and if you put it on the agenda and take it off the agenda, you know, that kind of thing. I really think that if we have it on there, even if it's kind of a fun thing, and say it's the time to welcome visitors with a 2-minute question and answer if they want to come forward. Kind of a situation where we can welcome them and invite them if they would like to, instead of forcing them to, like I know we have in the past, because we don't always have people. But I want to make sure that there's language on our agenda that lets them know that they are welcome to come, and that if they would like to bring up something, they will have 2 minutes. I don't think that would hurt anybody. And I really feel like we're kind of the grassroots of input for people, and there's not another way for them to talk to us as a group. And I understand the agenda thing makes it easier for us, but I don't think that saying that they have to be on an agenda, that scares a lot of people away. And I think that it would be much more welcoming if we said, if you have something to present to us, be on the agenda if you want more than 2 minutes. But if you want to just come up and say, hey, I just moved to the area, I just wanted to come in and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, I live in this neighborhood. I want to give them the opportunity to do that. Or if somebody wants to bring their kids in because they were watching it, or I'm now running the student council at our school, and I know that sometimes the kids will, like last minute or during the day today, would say, hey, can we come and say hi, or can we, whatever. I want to make sure that it's open. That's one of the barriers, equity and inclusivity. If you make it super formal to where they have to be on the agenda, you're much less likely to have somebody come in.
Well, hearing that, I could see where, because it's our agenda, these are pre-printed, I mean, words are relatively cheap on a piece of paper, so it would be easy for us to say, maybe it's something like, item 7 becomes visitor comments, parenthesis, 2 minutes maximum.
Right.
/ scheduled presentations. And if somebody has a lengthy presentation, we could decide in the moment that that's okay if we have a light agenda. But if they have something that's clearly more than a 2-minute conversation, we could say, hey, that's great. Let's schedule it.
Absolutely.
Please work with Sean. We'll get you on the agenda.
Right.
And we can make sure you have, whatever kind of props you need for your longer discussion.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's an idea that anybody prefers. But.
Or even, given that, I like the way that sounds, but even given that, if the comments seem to be particularly germane to some subject that we're dealing with, I think we should just be able to extend the length of that portion of the agenda if it's a worthwhile discussion.
Up to the pleasure of the chair,
Yeah.
possibly.
Yes,
But-
yes.
I agree, and I think that's where, if you put a time frame on there, you can always decide that, given the because if you have a late agenda or whatever's going on, you could always, the commission could always decide, we're going to extend it tonight because time allows.
Absolutely.
And because it's a worthwhile discussion. Yeah.
Commissioner Peltzer?
But sorry, I'm an HR person. You don't, I don't think that it's wise to say something that we follow Robert's Rules of Order. This is a procedure, a 2-minute limit, and be like, nah, we don't mean it. I don't think that you should propose, or, that it should be phrased like that if we don't mean it. So either let's title it Welcome Visitors and truly welcome visitors, or have it be visitor presentations. It just seems a little bit silly to say in one thing, like, this is the rules and this is our formal agenda. We're not going to follow it from the beginning of.
That's fair enough, although if to clarify what I was saying is that in one position, it is either visitor comments or if somebody actually has a presentation that's scheduled. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
But hearing what you're saying, if it's a 2-minute visitor comment, it's a 2-minute visitor comment, and if they're not scheduled, that's the time that they get, and we should be consistent with that, and I think that's a fair
Yeah,
statement.
there's as much of a likelihood that someone comes in with a, hey, I just wanted to share this fun little thing, or you all suck, so we're not going to extend we won't
Right.
want to extend the 2 minutes in that, if it's something that we don't want to hear. So there's a lot of bias associated with that. So that's, again, HR person, so something to kind of,
Yeah.
get away from, but that there's the opportunity in those 2 minutes to expand that in the future, get something scheduled so that that person has the resources that they
Yeah.
would need to give a more formal presentation, maybe even commission or staff support for
Right.
those.
That's a good point, and actually, as I think about that, then a scheduled presentation is just a presentation. So,
Right.
like where it says staff presentations, it could simply be presentations.
Right.
That could be staff, could also be, Bob Smith has something that they want to bring in, or whatever. And that we could have visitor comments. I think limiting it does make sense. And if somebody has a topic that feels like should take more time, we can encourage them to please coordinate, and we'll have a presentation timeframe.
Another option would be the 2 minutes, and then if we have questions, another minute or 2 minutes. You know what I mean? Like if we have questions for them and kind of to develop if they need to come.
Council's
in.
engaging them, therefore, the
Right.
commission's engaging them,
Exactly.
therefore, we're
There's
going to
opportunity.
extend
But
the
still
time.
put a limit on that too. I'm noticing that the more state level things I'm going to, that's what they do. They'll say, you have this much to come up and address us, and then 1 or 2 more minutes for us to ask you questions and respond.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
maybe, Sean, can you refresh my memory on why the city council eliminated the visitor presentation section?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I think there were just too many, over the years, opportunities for negative visitors constantly, to the point that other visitors never even bothered to come to a council meeting. So it was decided to just remove that visitor presentation portion. And I really feel for your struggle here. I hate to seem unwelcoming, but it may come down to the city council. The city council has to approve your amended rules of procedure. So it may just come down to the city directing us on where we should go.
In which case, then we'll accept it. I mean, because that's our job. We could go back and formally, recommend that they reconsider, but.
Yeah.
So I think, from what I'm hearing, I feel like most of us are saying, hey, we have a hard time filling our seats, and we're a warm fuzzy group. We would love it if somebody wants to come and share something. And if we suddenly got 20 people showing up yelling at us, maybe we'd feel differently. I don't know. Maybe we'd say, please send us an email. But we're not there, so I feel like it's okay for us to say, hey, we welcome visitor comments or
Because we can change it at any
yeah,
time.
but a time limit, like
Right.
2 minutes or whatever.
Well, and I really.
Just so we can
sorry.
have some control if needed, because if we did get a flood of people, we can't get it out of control here, so.
Right. And I just really feel like at the city council level, I get it, because a lot of people attend those. But at our level, we
grassroots
want
people.
engagement with the community, specifically with individuals, because we are what's accessible to them.
Yes.
And if they're shutting it off at their level, we need to be accessible at our level, because otherwise, how are we going to know our community?
That's right, yeah.
So-
And so I think that's a good point, and in fact, something that perhaps we can recommend the council consider. This is why, we see this as part of what we can help the council with, is we give an easy, unfrightening place for somebody to come and share something. But I would suggest that it changes from presentation, because that implies something, like we're giving over the floor for a permanent duration. I think it's visitor comments or visitor engagement or something like that. Visitor comment.
Sign it if they want.
Yeah. Visitor comment, and it's 2 minutes. That's what I would suggest.
Sure. Just a quick comment. Yeah, I'm all for visitor presentations. As I mentioned in the last meeting, what I don't like is I don't like it, the number 7. If this is something that's usually going to be very, very brief, it would be better to get it over with, is to have the visitor sit through an hour or two of different things. I know if I was doing that, and I have done that at city council, you know, I might not come if I can't spend 2 or 3 hours. So I think if we could move it up, you know, further up the agenda so that they wouldn't be much of a time commitment. Because I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying let's deal with it. It's going to be infrequently anyways.
Yep.
So let's get to it so they can get on their business. We can get on our business.
It's a great comment. So with that, can I suggest then that our agendas would look like A, B, C, and D all stay as they are. The new E would become visitor comments, 2-minute time frame per person. Then,
I was actually thinking before.
I'm looking at the agenda.
Oh.
On
was
this,
actually thinking-
I'm sorry, I'm looking at page 2 on this, our Environmental Natural Resource Commission rules and procedures.
I was looking at the printed one with it.
Yeah, so like, if you look right here, so.
Mr.
we'd
Chair,
have,
I think
call to
last
order,
time,
roll call, approval of agenda, approval of minutes, and then we would insert visitor comments, 2-minute max. Then we'd have unfinished business, then new business, and then I would also like to suggest that we just have presentations, under which can be commissioner presentations, or staff presentations, or a public presentation, or anybody like that. Because it's got to be coordinated through staff anyway, so, does that make sense?
I was actually looking at it before unfinished, or
Yeah, I put it before unfinished business.
before unfinished business?
Yeah.
Yes.
But after, because I think roll call, agenda, and minutes are fast
Yes,
and
yeah.
business that's got to
Yeah.
get done, so let's go do it.
Yes, I like that. Thank you.
one point is, last meeting, you mentioned that, you know, there are some items that we really have to take action on, and they might involve members of the public coming, as an example, for the wetland variance. Should they have to sit through the visitor presentations prior to getting down to the business at hand?
Well, I think
Have a time limit. Are we having a time limit?
Yeah, we have a time limit where, I think when we say 2 minutes, I think we've been thinking that's per person. Is that correct? That's my perception.
Yes.
We could also have a total time limit, but I don't think, I hear what you're saying, but so far I don't think we're at risk of that being an issue. Because I think we've only ever had one visitor actually unannounced say something here in the 3 years I've been doing this, so. So I hear what you're saying, Sean, but what I would like to suggest is that we just try to roll with this, and if we end up with some visitor shenanigans, or it's like, whoa, we got so many things going on, we could always reconsider. But I don't think we're at risk of being overrun.
I apologize. I just had a thought and thinking of people that came to comment on, like, if a neighbor is coming to comment on a wetland variance that we're looking at, they would, I just got it convoluted in my head. That's not part of the visitor
That's fair.
piece. That's part of the business
Right.
piece that's involved with it. Just had that, wait a minute, no, we don't need to.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's really not visitor comment. It wants to be another word, visitor engagement, visitor.
I said visitor welcome Q&A.
Community engagement?
Yeah.
I mean, do we have
It
to
could
be
be a-
consistent with the,
Yeah, with our verbiage, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Community engagement, 2 minutes a person if they want to come in. Absolutely.
I-
But we want to make sure that they're not coming in to
Yes.
expand on an issue, or maybe they can. You know, like, because trash and recycling is coming up, and we may, I know at one point, had a whole bunch of people that were unhappy with stuff, and coming in. But, you know, even with those, if that, I mean, I think it's important to hear them. So 2 minutes, tell me your piece, and then you're done, and you can sit and listen to our discussion, because that might be more important for our decisions, too.
Yeah. And frankly, as I've presented in front of councils quite a bit, and if somebody came forth with an issue before I even got a chance to speak, I would actually be thankful for it, because I'd know what's on their mind.
Yeah.
I would be able to address that, you know? So, okay. Do we have a motion for that, or?
Do I make a motion?
What do we call it?
Community engagement.
Sure.
Good job.
So the action requested, it said recommended action, approve the revised ENR Commission's rules of procedures attached to this report. So maybe our action is that we're approving with tonight's modification, or
Modified agenda.
approving the rules of procedures attached to this report with the agenda modified per our discussion.
Yeah.
I would second that.
Okay.
We have a motion, we have a second, and we're clear on what the modified agenda is? Is there any reason why we need to
Moving
go through that?
the community engagement to,
Yeah, I was asking,
Yes, thank you. So you'll add a community engagement, and that'll be after approval of minutes. And we'll also identify that as 2 minutes, either on the agenda itself. Maybe we should put something, a little section on visitor, on community engagement, and what that entails. That's limited to 2 minutes and 1 minute follow-up.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
all right.
We'll roll with that one.
civility.
All right, we have a
Including
motion on the
rules of
floor.
civility,
We have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Great. Thank you.
We love making your world difficult and fun and exciting, and I said fun work.
So staff presentations, we have 3 identified.
So I brought up the Ramsey County Food and Nutrition Commission meeting already. That'll be March 4th. I did bring up the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission vacancy. We do have 1 vacancy, and we have several applications, and those will be, the interviews will take place, from what I understand, maybe in the next month. So we hope to have that position filled here shortly. And then the Maplewood Nature Center programs, I think our rescheduled meeting kind of threw people off, and I didn't get our fun little handouts. But I do want to remind our viewing audience that there's some great programs with the Maplewood Nature Center. Of course, our partners in environmental education, and you can view those at www.maplewoodnaturecenter.com. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned.